Hey movers, shakers, and the stuck but curious. I'm Freya Gordon, and this is Good Shift, the podcast that helps you figure out what's next in your career and make a move with confidence. Hey Shift Squad, today we have a very special guest, Bianca Smeekes, who is joining us and has been a really integral part of my journey actually, moving through a really stuck period in my life and helping me unlock my mindset. Really excited to impart your wisdom today to everyone, Bianca. So Bianca, I know you've made lots of career transitions yourself, and while I feel like we know each other really well, we actually haven't sort of spent time personally digging into your story through all your shifts.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to uncover those a bit more today. And also, given that you are a mind-body practitioner and an expert in mindset, I know that there's going to be a huge amount of knowledge that you can share with the listeners today to help other people who are stuck or feeling curious about what else is out there and how they can move forward and make their own shifts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, let's talk some shift. First question to sort of set the scene. I'd love if you could chat us through your career transitions and why you took those leaps.
Yeah, absolutely. So career transitions, if we start, I guess, all the way back to when I first started working, well, not my teenage working, but working after I finished university.
Jobs.
Yeah, not my summer jobs. My job at the dairy, the Indian restaurant. We'll leave that out. But yeah, university, I finished at the end of 2014 with a master's in business management, and I'd also studied psychology with a real interest in health psychology. I always knew I didn't want to become a psychologist, but once I'd finished my psychology degree, I had this intention of sort of going perhaps into like HR, something, business development, like that's where I saw myself heading. So after I finished my master's, my first job was in a business role at the University of Canterbury in the business school. The age I was at, which would have been about 23, 24, it was a really good job to land and a stable job, you know. I guess back then in terms of income, it was probably again quite heading in the right direction, and I was really stoked with that. I will add before that, just as I was about to start that job, I had a very profound internal shift, and that was similar to the journey you've been on through the lightning process and the work we've done together, but I was, for context, dealing with some chronic symptoms, some chronic pain, anxiety, and I learned a lot of tools that really helped me move out of that place to a point where I was like living life again and feeling really good in my body and free to do that, like to love life again. So I was in that, found it really stable, found that, you know, there were parts of it I enjoyed. But as I got into it more, there was this kind of nudge, inkling, I guess, just that feeling of like, is this it? You know, I don't know. I'm sure some of the people listening will relate.
I feel like that is the most relatable feeling.
It's that uncomfortableness that is, it's like a whisper. Like you can push it down and you go into work and I check stuff and I do all the stuff, you know, like check the news and do the same thing day in, day out, drive there and tick all the boxes. And like I said, there were parts I really enjoyed, but after a while it was like the mundaneness of being in a place where I felt like I wasn't myself, which work often, you know, we work with that. But the values that I had, I was in an institution that I felt like it was a lot more straight than what where my passions were lying. So yeah, that was the first point where I was like, something needs to change. And I sat on that for quite a while. I did some travel. I went over to the US. I was doing trips with my girlfriend. So there were little things that kept me going. But I think maybe a year in, at least for 6 months, I started to feel really heavy and just really stuck. And I started questioning a lot of, what am I even doing? Like, I thought I'd be fulfilled. Am I meant to be here? Am I meant to be in New Zealand? Like, there were a lot of questions that started coming into my mind, and it was hard to know what the next step was, because when we follow a path and you study in a particular area, and then if you have something to the side that happened, such as the experience I had with moving through chronic pain and a whole lot of new learnings, it almost threw me a little bit, because I was like, oh, now the stuff I thought I was not meant to be doing, but I had put and invested energy and money into to get my degree.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's actually like what I really want to be doing.
Yeah. And to that point, I think that's where a lot of people can start feeling really stuck, when they're having those whisperings like you were having. And I like how you described that a bit more. So for anyone who's not sure if the feelings they're having are stuck feelings or not.
Yes.
People feel like they've invested a lot of time, money, blood, sweat and tears through whether it's paying for university or those student loans, all that effort you've put into studying a certain something. And if you're going to make a change, then it can feel like you're throwing it all away.
Yeah, and also praise from other people. You know, that's a big part of it. I think sometimes when we're getting praise from other people, oh, like congrats for getting that role, or for being in this industry, or it's just a given expectation in your family, or, you know, from yourself. I think it's easy to miss the little cues that perhaps we push aside. Those feelings for me was just that almost boredom, but a bit of numbness, I guess. I'd find myself just like questioning a lot about what I wanted, and I guess I was at a point at that stage where I wasn't making enough money for it to really be on the line, but I could see that if I'd taken steps to continue that path, then I probably would have been in a place where, you know, it would have been quite easy for me to continue into certain roles.
Yeah, for sure. Now you're feeling all these feelings. How did you make a break to make a change?
Yeah, it's actually so funny thinking back, because I really haven't thought about this in quite a long time. It's quite refreshing. So yeah, I was sitting in that uncomfortableness, and actually I started even getting anxiety back, which I hadn't experienced for at least that year, feeling really good, and a few aches and pains, which again since then have never come back. But I also feel like my body was even giving me a few cues of like, this isn't working for you, and you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself to make this work. That may or may not resonate to a lot of people, but
no, I like that, like listening to the signals.
Like headaches or anxiety, just those feelings of not wanting to be in that position,
just not feeling right.
Yeah, because I do believe our body is quite a barometer of like how where we're at health-wise, mental health-wise, and just in alignment with what, you know, where we're heading. I did definitely want to travel. It felt like a bit of a distant dream, but it got to the point where I was so uncomfortable that I'm like, I don't think Christchurch is for me anymore. And I looked at heading to London with my partner at the time. And at that point I just jumped, and I decided like, I'm going to go overseas with the intention at that time to start studying, adding into my study. And I'm going to take the pressure off, and I'm just going to work in a job that can help me fund my overseas travel and my study at the moment. So
for people who are at that point where you were, where things aren't feeling right, they're uncomfortable and they want to make that leap, what was that pivotal point for you? Was it just the culmination of feeling this way for 6 months and you just sort of broke on a certain day, or did someone say something in particular that you're like, okay,
I think it was a both. I think once I started feeling a bit more anxiety and just that almost dread, I guess, of going into the office, and like, it wasn't necessarily the people, but
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
And just I remember just that constant question of like, there has to be more. Like I want to be having different conversations. I want to be doing different things than this. That was a start, and I think sitting on it for so long, which was actually the right thing for me, because I had to get to that point where I was really like, no, I deserve to do something different, and this doesn't mean like I failed or I can do this. I had to get to that point where I was like, I just need to make a different shift. But yeah, I definitely think it was just an accumulative thing, and then just like, what is there to lose? But I did feel quite stuck, put it that way.
And so once you went over to London, I presume the course you're talking about is the lightning process course.
Yeah.
And did you manage to get a spot in that right away as you'd wanted, or did you do some travel first?
Yeah, actually I will say on the part where I was feeling really stuck, what I started doing in the background at that point is started to read more into things that I had passions in,
Yeah.
to start to get curious of like, if I do go and study this, like, does this really light me up? Like the mind-body connection, neuroscience, is this something that I could like, yeah, I just started getting curious. And I did read quite a lot of books that I really had strong feelings of like, this feels so, I'm so interested in this. Like I just wanted to keep reading. So there were also other things happening in the background where I was like, you know, I'm very much believe if we go with like what lights us up, it can take us in really amazing places. So it was a bit of that.
I'm happy you added that in, because I think a lot of people are at that point where they're ready to make a change, but they don't know what they might do or what steps to take next. Yeah. Especially if they're in the job that they have trained for through university or whatever that may be. So I've talked to other people about this. It's just about really getting curious at this point. It might be pursuing something that you're really interested in, like it obviously was with you after you'd moved through these chronic symptoms and you had an underlying interest in that. And then you're validating that to yourself. But I think reading books, listening to podcasts, getting out there networking and talking to people is the best foundation to start, because things then start happening quite naturally once you've given yourself a foundation. Yeah,
I totally agree. Like expanding your life, not the work itself, but around the work. And I think so often we compartmentalize like work, my interests, you know, whatever else is going on in life. But even if you can put more energy into curiosity outside of work, just to fuel that fire almost of like what the possibility, because if you have been just doing, you know, the 9 to 5 and it's been working to a point and then you're feeling stuck, then you do need those good feelings from somewhere. So even if it's not like, what am I doing next for work, at least you're getting some feel good things, and the state of curiosity is really powerful.
And if you're just sitting there thinking, I want to make a change, but you're not taking any steps towards that, it's not just going to come and slap you in the face. Some people get very lucky and it does, but most of the time you need to be putting in the work to set that foundation for yourself.
Yeah, and I think we put so much pressure on ourselves, like what is the right way to move, but what really helped me is reframing like failure and seeing it as like, I am going to give myself the space to explore this or be curious about this or read this. And there's nothing right or wrong if I do enjoy it or I don't enjoy it, rather than like putting pressure on ourselves to get the perfect next step. Yeah. It's always one choice at a time, I think.
And so speaking of your next step, tell us what happened next.
Yeah, sorry. So I got to London. I did end up getting onto the lightning process training.
And just for everyone who doesn't have any context on that, that's actually something that I went through myself with Bianca. She was my practitioner in that. So it's come full circle. Yeah. And that's actually something that I've done an episode on Bianca's podcast, so you can go and listen to my experience with her through that, and her podcast as well, which has a lot more information on that. And we'll give you notes about where to find Bianca at the end. So for people that want to explore that more, it's super interesting process, all about the mind-body connection.
Yeah, to add on to what Freya's saying, because I'd already had an interest in psychology, it didn't feel like for me, I'm quite glad, it didn't feel like a massive step to learning. Before becoming a lightning process practitioner, which I was unsure about at the time, I really just wanted to do some study in the personal development space, which was like the foundation that you have to do even if you want to become a practitioner. So something called NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which is in the kind of, I guess, the mental skills, subconscious reprogramming, so similar to hypnotherapy. I did modules in hypnotherapy as well, and a few life coaching and a few other elements. And so I was working full-time at King's College, which was another university, and every month there'd be trainings for the NLP and the hypnotherapy. Yeah. So it wasn't like I was studying full-time like you would be as like a student at university, but it was weekend or like 4-day courses quite consistently over the course of like 15 months. So that's when I started doing all sorts of stuff.
So that's interesting. You started a new job at King's University, and that was a similar job to what you'd been in when you were in Christchurch, or different?
Similar, but I probably wouldn't say as much responsibility. Okay. I definitely think when I moved overseas, I just thought I think it's easier to do when you're on an OE because you're unless you're thinking long term, you're like, I'm here for a set amount of time, and just understanding that things probably aren't always going to work in your favor in terms of jobs and that kind of thing. So I did have that compartmentalized a little bit. And there were times where I was thinking like, oh, my friends back home, they're stepping into their little careers, or my friends do some amazing things. So there was a lot of like people really owning their specific career, but I gave myself grace to know like it's okay to explore. And I guess I was mid-20s, so I felt like just be present in this phase of your life, this 2-year block. And I was really enjoying my study. It was like, I'd done the lightning process, and then the study was just like exponential growth of like going deeper and uncovering things about myself, which I knew regardless of what I did in terms of work in the future, just the understanding of myself would really help me navigate anything I stepped into.
And so I like that you had gone into another job that wasn't that job into King's University. It doesn't sound like it was the hugest leap for you, because it was relatively similar, in fact, like lower responsibility, but at the same time you're making this transition by slowly incorporating this extra learning on the side. So I think that's a nice way. Lots of people make a hard transition where they just either go start their own business right away, or they go into a job that is in a completely different field, or they stop completely and go to study. And those are, I guess, what I'd call hard transitions. And that's epic, but those are also can be very confronting to make, and you might not have the exact direction or the skills you want to move into the next thing. So I really like the way that you went about that, taking the opportunity of the overseas experience as a bit of a change and a break, still having a job, you can keep earning money, and that's like a nice bit of security as well, but you're actually forging this other path on the side, and that's where your transition really feels like it started getting momentum.
Absolutely. And like, I'll be honest, the money I was earning at King's was like I guess a standard salary in the UK. That was going into my travel, like the travel I could do, and it was going into paying off bits of my study. So in comparison to my friends who were over there having the OE experience, I think I was balling out on a budget, because it wasn't all easy, It's not that I questioned it, because I absolutely loved it, but I knew that there was going to be a payoff. And the payoff for me, it wasn't just living this like glamorous life, traveling a lot and just being fully present. I had to study. I was working, but I purposely chose a role which wouldn't require perhaps as much responsibility, so I could balance that. And knowing that, like financially, I would just have to move through this period with what I could do. And it worked out okay and in the end, but I think it was just, again, knowing that, it did require a lot of sometimes just accepting that this was a season I was in, for sure. And
so can you talk us through what happened when you took the lightning process, and subsequently? I'm interested to find out how you got to where you are today. I don't really know that part of your story.
So the last 3 months of the NLP and the life coaching and hypnotherapy, you'd done that, I think it was about 13 months. And then the last 3 months you could add extra 3 months on to become a qualified lightning process practitioner. And by that point, I guess I was coming kind of towards the ends of my time in London, and I was like, well, why not? Like, this training really transformed my life, and I'm interested in it now that I've stepped into it, because, as you say, the clarity happens in being in the process. As someone who naturally, I think, I did a lot of, and still moves through some overthinking sometimes, it's been refreshing to know that like I grew so much in that time, because I was constantly putting myself in not the unknown, but like knowing I might not know fully the next step until it's revealed. So I, at that point, did decide like, I'm going to go ahead and finish this and become a lightning process training practitioner. And I guess I had probably 3 months to go. It all kind of like tied in nicely. And towards the end of my visa running out, I did all the exams, was qualified, just had that sitting there, didn't do anything until I moved back to New Zealand in the middle of 2019. And that's when I started seeing clients, and I guess that's when it became challenging. Because I think at that point I was challenging for many reasons, but at that point I was like, I'm just going to naturally ease my way into this whole new career.
Yeah.
And all the clients are going to magically come towards me.
Having your own business.
Yeah. And, you know, like I was in a place where I think like my dad and my auntie, quite business orientated people. Dad was trying to give me advice, and like, I don't know, it's in one ear out the other. Like,
it's hard to listen to your parents on that sort of thing.
I just don't think I think I didn't realize that it's being a business owner, you're coming against yourself a lot. So we might talk on that in a second, but I guess it was the start of a new journey.
You would have had to set up your own business at that point, right? So that is like a really big transition from going to the safety of having worked for someone else. And I guess that was a bit of an element of safety to what you were doing with the discovery process and the learning with the lightning process, because, you know, you're investing in yourself, but you haven't really had to take that leap to fully trust yourself to start a business.
Yeah.
So can you talk us through that a little bit and the fears around
setting
up a business?
I actually, I mean... And
also, I would love to hear, you know, exactly what your business involves and what you do. I obviously know a lot about what you do, but keen for everyone else to hear about that too.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know what I thought. I think I was glad, looking back now, I was very naive, and sometimes I'm still naive. I'm like, you're always figuring out things along the way. But one thing I guess that might be important to know is like it's a service orientated business. So I wasn't selling a product. I didn't have anyone with me. It was me offering a service. And at that point, just, you know, like the one that I sort of assumed this one offering will sustain me and that will be what I do. So since then it's changed a little bit, well, it's changing. But I guess like very quickly I came up against myself. The first thing was registering like a company and actually like the accounting and that side of thing. I know I'd done a master's in business management, but it's like I must have been asleep during a degree.
I feel like a lot of people have that. You come out of your degree and they're like, wow, this is all brand new.
Well, it's like I always like the social, like the strategy and business development and like human resource, that always really like stuck with me. But accounting and finance, not my thing, not my forte. So that I do remember feeling in the initial stages like quite overwhelmed, and like it's just like, oh my gosh, like where do I start with this? And it can be an isolated journey. But back then I guess it was like, right, that piece, and now it's like, well, how are people going to find me? So I started to, with some hesitancy, I would say, share parts of my story, which for me was like quite a big step, naturally like quite a private person. So once I put myself out there, I was like hoping that would like help people find me that could resonate. Yeah, I had to move through a lot of around being seen. For me as the person, you know, offering the service. Definitely the technical side of things, and like I remember first of all getting like my website and photos done. That was the first thing I did, and looking back now I'm like, it makes me laugh because it's like I think I was working backwards, like if I get that stuff out of the way it's all going to flow nicely, but really it's
I feel like there's some easy things to sort of do, like get your logo or whatnot, and it feels like you're making progress. So, and I guess those are small wins that sort of keep you going with the other stuff, but it's really just the surface level stuff.
It's totally was resistant to actually doing any like of the nitty gritty stuff. You know, I was questioning like, what do I do here? Do I get a part-time job? Like I thought, okay, I can fully make it work. But just to give some context, like things very quickly changed for me personally after I got back. So the most difficult by far season in my life, touch wood, that I hopefully will never have to move through again, but it coincided with my mum being diagnosed with cancer, or terminal cancer, at the end of that year, after registering my company about 2 months before that.
So shit.
And moving home and going through a breakup. So
holy shit, you had it all going on.
I had a perfect storm.
Like that's transition on transition on transition.
I'm not over exaggerating. My life literally, any stability I knew in life just completely got ripped from beneath me. And I'm always really honest about that, because at that point I could have, and actually looking back now, there would have been some room for me just to put a hold on things and get into full-time work. But I also knew with my mum, nothing was guaranteed, right? And I'm so glad I had the insight to know that time is very precious, and quality time is. And I never regret one decision I made, even if I was making like hardly anything at that time, because that's what my journey's taught me as well, is that like you can work your ass off and be so limited in like good relationships, right?
Yeah.
Not only that, but which was a shock and complete shock, but COVID happened.
Another thing to add to the
brew. Like, oh my gosh. So at that point, like I wasn't even sure if I was gonna be like I wanted to stay in Christchurch. I really returned to London because I had to with the visa, but I was like, maybe I go back there and like I loved it there, so maybe I just head back. But once everything happened in my personal life, I knew that there was no looking too far forward.
Yeah.
So with the business, how that looked for me is I'll be realistic, doing the bare minimum and getting clients and really nurturing the clients I had.
Yeah.
And spending time with my family and being in lockdown, so not really getting the choice to do much else.
Yeah.
But that's how it looked for a good year and a half for me. So I did actually get a part-time job, more for the social, money helped, but the social part of it, I got a manager role at Lululemon.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew about, which was amazing because I think it's another thing, especially as an entrepreneur, paving the way where there's no clear picture as to where you're going, you know. That's how it felt for me. I didn't know anyone doing anything like I was doing.
Yeah.
So I didn't have anyone to be like, this is how you do it. It was just such a distinctive feeling of like, I don't know, what are people doing similar things? Like I don't have any models. So the Lululemon job just got me out of my head a lot.
And was there a point where you went and got that job with Lululemon and you thought, this is actually so much better for where I'm at, like I'm just going to let the business go at this point? Because I do feel like there's a point, and obviously your circumstances were particularly difficult and different, but a lot of people can make that leap or fear that they'll make that leap and then they're just going to want to go back to doing something, and that can feel like maybe you're letting yourself down in a way, or you just want to go back to the safety net.
Yeah, you're so right. There was definitely like a belief I had to move through myself of like, you're not failing, or like it's okay to do this.
Yeah.
I definitely think it made it easier to just do it given the season I was in, but it's almost like I needed to give myself permission that no one's going to see you differently by getting a part-time job and like a retail job. Like even now sometimes I'm like, I just want another little part-time job just for diversity. Like I think there should be no shame in that, because the pressure I put on myself to make things work and to go all in, I don't think it was that useful, because you get so you want to make things to work so bad, you just get so kind of zoned in on the business.
I really like that as well, because I think people think there is a linear path. They make a change, or you know, and especially if they're starting their own business, and then that's the path they're on. But you know, having acceptance that you can go and do these different things while having the business, or you know, you can always change back. Like it doesn't have to be this path that's just going forward in a certain way. And I think that's what can stop a lot of people, fear paralysis, to move on, because you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go start my own business and now I have to do that for the rest of my life. But transition after transition after transition, it's like all good stuff.
Yeah. And I guess on that, like you're not going to be this, I mean, I had like a fast track evolution, I guess, but you're definitely not going to be the same person as you are when you first have the feeling to start a business, even like a year down the track.
Completely.
And it's, I think it comes to this, what we see through other people's journeys, we always see the end result, or like where they're at in their point, and we see social media. And I just think it's, giving yourself that leeway to like evolve and know that it doesn't, like, we might have parents and people in our lives that are like, I've been in that career for 30 years, but it's just, I don't think it's like that anymore.
And I think that's a huge part of this podcast as well, is talking to people that are at not a point where they've gone and started a business a long time ago and they've just been rolling with that, or people who have been in a career for a certain amount of time, but people who are relatably here in it, making those changes. And I so resonate with what you said. Like if I think about myself 5 years ago, 5 months ago, like we're evolving so much, so it makes sense to like just be like, let yourself be able to think that making change all the time is good. I mean, obviously you don't want to just be jumping around year to year because you haven't found fulfillment as much, but
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's that balancing act between like focused intention, but also having that flexibility and adaptability. And I guess being in a season of life at that time where it was all consuming. The business for me, I'm so glad I had that awareness that it was like, this is a season where your priorities can shift.
Yeah.
And that is okay. And I took a hit, in comparison, like I had to block out the noise of what everyone around me was doing.
Yeah.
You know, at this point I was 28, like people had really progressed in their careers. I was not. I was starting up, like my life was rocky foundations. Like I was like, what the fuck? Like, what am I doing? But I was like, this is a season where I just have to be present in this season. And I had built enough trust in myself, mainly through really tapping into like knowing that sometimes everything's an illusion. Like just because you're working a certain career and everything looks perfect and you're driving that car in that house doesn't mean you're fulfilled. So I knew that deep down. I always tried to keep that in the back of my mind.
So is that what sort of helped you looking at other people who were on this path, knowing that it doesn't necessarily mean that everything is perfect for them and you're falling behind, but everyone's just on their own journey? And
well, I think working with clients, it makes you always
very aware.
It gives you an insight into people's worlds, and like we can all put stuff on social media, but you know, like at the end of the day, the people that are truly fulfilled, like it's probably not as many as we think, because we can distract ourselves easily, and we've all done it. And
I love that you'd found something that you could identify as fulfilling. I think it's what is sort of a goal for a lot of people, is to find that fulfillment. And so we've obviously talked a little bit about how to start there, but also we're talking a lot about your clients and things, and we haven't got to the bottom of what you do. So let's just give that context to everyone. Everyone's going to be thinking, what on earth is it?
Oh, we probably should put that in the start. That's so funny. I'm sorry, guys.
No, we've been on a journey.
We've been on a journey. But, so what I actually do now is I'm a lightning process practitioner. My business is called Neurospark. I'm a mind-body practitioner. I'm a coach. I facilitate workshops, do coaching, sometimes speaking. At the moment, my services are the lightning process training, which I did with Freya, which is a training about the mind-body connection, helping people retrain their brain, regulate their nervous system. And I work predominantly with people stuck with chronic symptoms, and that could be like physical symptoms or mental health symptoms. I also run a group coaching program for women called Self-Sourced, and that's really about women stepping into their power, you know, stopping people pleasing, owning their voice, feeling good in their body. Because as I've done this work for a while now, I really start to see certain patterns and themes. And I think to do this for women is really, has a really positive effect on our overall health. Yeah. And then I also do workplace wellbeing and run MindFlex workshops. MindFlex is the branding. And that has been a little bit more on demand, but it's something I'm really looking to focus more of my energy in, helping employees build mental fitness and resilience. Yeah. So that's the umbrella now.
Great. Okay, good to have the content. You're in a position where you're helping out a lot of people.
Yeah.
How did you get past, you mentioned it earlier, the feeling of imposter syndrome? I think a lot of people can get that imposter syndrome when they're trying to start something up. So keen to hear about that.
I definitely experienced it, and I still do sometimes. In terms of like the initial stages, it really helped me having a training workshop that was already designed by someone else. So I'm a practitioner of it, meaning like I had a sort of structure. Yeah. I knew I was following something. So that really helped me kind of gain confidence, because I'm like, I just need to follow this. I need to present it in a way that feels good. And it was daunting at the initial stages, but seeing people get shifts, and then you start to build your momentum. And I think that's a thing. It's like, so often we think that the imposter syndrome isn't meant to be there, but I think it's that gap between like competence and confidence. Like the more you do something, the more you naturally start to step in and own that space. And anything new I put out there, I really try and understand what people are wanting more of, but there's still that feeling of like, you know, do I have the skills, or am I qualified enough, or is this what they want? And I've really had to shift away from it, again, like turn the spotlight back on me and be like, if I share this, I need to trust that I don't need to save everyone and the right people. And people will take what they want, because like we know anyone that says something at the time, you might not take something huge, but then you're sitting and you're like, oh yeah, remember that thing they said. So for me, it's moving through imposter syndrome has actually been quite a bit around releasing responsibility of having to like have everything perfect and having to solve everyone's stuff, and just I guess that trust that comes with doing something consistently.
I think perfection is a big part of imposter syndrome. No matter what you go and do to start, like people just aren't going to feel like they're quite ready for it, especially at this age, right? Maybe if you're 60 and you're starting something up, you feel like you're so experienced that you can roll into that. But if you think about anyone who is an expert in their field, they started somewhere and they did that because they jumped in, and then they continued to gain that experience, which has got them to this place. So I think that's always a really key thing to remember when experiencing imposter syndrome, that a large part of that is perfection, having that pressure on yourself, that it has to be perfect in order for you to
step into it.
Offering something to someone else, or, you know, even if it's just going to get a new job, that you have to go and prep yourself in all these certain ways first.
Yeah, and it definitely showed up for me when I was starting to be online on social media, getting like camera, you know, it's like you think you've maybe moved through a layer, and then there's another, like perhaps, I wouldn't even say like, it's just a block that gets in the way, I think, for all of us, but especially if you're, you know, stepping into business. And I think where a lot of us, we feel like it shouldn't be there. And, you know, with the nervous system, which is a lot of the work I do, it's like the capacity to experience the discomfort, it happens in little stages. So if you can just kind of like have that compassion, be like, this is uncomfortable, I'm going to sit with this and do this. And then you've expanded what we call the window of tolerance. So like your ability to be with like the unknown and the discomfort, and to like do something different. For me, it was like the podcast was a huge expander, and I'm sure for you it's the same. It's like, there's a little bit of like, who's going to listen, what's going to happen, but I'm going to do it anyway.
What are some tips that you would give to people who are very uncomfortable being uncomfortable? Like, discomfort is a big part of what holds people back, I think. You know, we like to feel stable and safe.
I do think the first thing is knowing that the brain naturally is wired for safety and protection. Okay, so if we can like really just face that and be like, okay, so naturally my brain has like a negative bias, it's going to try and protect me from doing anything uncomfortable, then to me that removes like a level of any judgment, and just knowing it is what it is. Like it's kind of doing, my brain's doing the right thing by like not wanting me to step outside of my comfort zone. In that sense, it's like coming face to face with it, because we can do so many things to be like, oh, I don't really like this, but I'm gonna like go out with the girls and have a drink. And again, I've done that. I've like, or eat food, or, you know, alcohol, sex, whatever it is, we can distract ourselves from it. And that's again normal until we start to say, okay, well, something's not working. And then I guess it's just gaining some clarity of like, what's one next micro step you can take. I guess if it's like, let's say someone's unhappy in their job, it's like they could set aside time, because our brain also loves routines, like 10 minutes in the morning to start just looking on Seek or a job platform to just get curious. It might not even be applying, but it's like, I'm going to actually take one step in a different direction. As we move through those small steps, that's where we actually build self-trust. Again, it happens in the process rather than expecting like there's going to be a perfect time where I feel comfortable enough to make a change.
I love that. I think a lot of people see people that have gone and like built something amazing or made this big change, and what we don't realize is that there's actually been a lot of steps put in place to get to there, like small steps to take a big leap.
Definitely. And sometimes sideward steps, like not always forward steps, but might be like mulling over something for a while. And like even like, again, the podcast, like I was sitting on that for a year before I made a step, but I was also doing like little, like listening to other people's podcasts in the background and just kind of one step out of the comfortable box, knowing that the box is something that, again, has to this point served you well, and it's been a form of safety and gotten you to this point, but it's also okay to to test the waters a little bit.
I love what you said about just making it a little routine every day. The brain loves routine, and just starting to build it that way. It feels really manageable.
Because our brain likes control and familiar. I can't get the word out again. Familiarity. Because the structure of it, right? It's less brain power. It's like something we can control at a time perhaps where you're like looking to do things a bit out of the comfort zone. At least it's something predictable.
I also want to chat to you about limiting beliefs. I think that is a large underpinning of why people don't make changes. And
for sure,
obviously this goes through personal and professional life, but a lot of people I'm passionate about connecting with on this podcast are those in like a specific role who don't feel fulfilled. What do you think some of those common limiting beliefs for people in those roles that they might be able to relate to are?
A limiting belief is any belief, thought pattern, perception that makes us feel really stuck from sort of progressing, right? And it's something that feels like a belief or a habit that gets in the way. A lot of our limiting beliefs come about between the ages of 0 to 7. Some of the core ones, I mean, we are shifting beliefs throughout our life, but some of our core ones, which are really common ones, like I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, or I need to work hard to get validation. For example, perfectionism, like if you were validated in your earlier years for doing really well at athletics and sports and getting really good grades, although it's like a positive thing in a sense, and perhaps you weren't given as much validation for other stuff, you might, like your little child brain, may fill a gap in knowledge, which at the time there's no context for, and you're like, okay, when I do really well and do things perfectly, I get validated. We start building evidence to support that belief that was imprinted on us. And for the most part, we don't really have a lot of awareness around what beliefs are because they just appear as our reality. So it's like how we see life, we just sort of think it's how everyone sees life. But, two siblings can have the same upbringing, but see life in like or twins can have like completely different outlooks. So a lot of it has to do with these beliefs that have somewhere along the way through parents, culture, like schooling, there's so many different things, friends, we learn something to fill a gap in knowledge and we continue with that until we get to adulthood and we're like, why do I feel so stuck? Why can I not, like, I'm getting more money now but it's going out just as fast, like why can't I hold anything? It comes out in all these like little ways. So beliefs basically are our guiding force, and we all have limiting beliefs, but like I said, the thing is most of the time we're not really aware of what a limiting belief.
When we don't identify with them, they're influencing your life without you really knowing.
And they're driving a lot of your autopilot habits because 95% of what we do is beyond our awareness, meaning that, and we're creatures of habit, so we do the same thing day in, day out. And a lot of that's based on us having a really strong belief of this is the way life should be.
What are a few sort of classic examples of just some limiting beliefs?
So like the I am not good enough, it can show up as self-doubt, perfectionism, fear of failure, and that can be when perhaps you had some unmet needs growing up, or there was lots of criticism growing up. So that's one that a lot of us have. Another one is I need to be in control to feel safe. So if I know, like, it's in that sort of that whole, if I know exactly how this is going to go when I step into this new role, then I'll feel safe. But I don't know, so I'm not going to take that risk.
And unfortunately we don't have that glass ball to look into the future, so
people
can just stay stuck.
And the thing is, people might not be thinking these sentences out loud. It's more just sort of like something you're like, oh yeah, I kind of see a lot around like people pleasing. If I keep everyone else happy, like family, friends, or that I gain safety that way, or that makes me feel calmer when I know everyone else around me is happy. So in that sense, it's like you might have learned that putting other people's needs first is really important, and you end up therefore living a life where other people's expectations of you is more important than your own, and you feel a bit out of balance of what you want versus what you're actually living. I guess your self-talk, really, those sentences that are really sweeping sentences, like I could never start a business because I don't have enough knowledge. Like that word never, it's like permanent statement. There's no room for change. It's a strong belief. This always happens to me. I always attract the same kind of guy, you know?
Yeah.
A very strong belief
Like,
that
I'm the most unlucky person in the world.
Exactly. Or any kind of like I am statements, those identity statements, often strong beliefs as well.
What do you think some core limiting beliefs? People might not have identified them yet, sort of as a limiting belief, but you know, and I know that I've had a lot of these, and I've recently uncovered a lot of them, and it's been really instrumental to me making change.
Yes.
So, like, what do you think some are that people might be feeling a bit stuck and not able to move forward, that they could be experiencing, that we could maybe just bring up, that people may be able to start relating to? Because as we're just discussing, identifying them is really the first step to being able to then reframe them. So.
Yeah, I guess if we're thinking about like making change and stepping into like whether it be a new role or starting a business, the belief of like I'll be behind everyone else.
Yes, that's a really good one.
Or like it's sort of rooted in again in societal expectations of where we should be at. So the opposite of that, and what I've really had to work on, is like learning to. It's like there's no you're never too old basically, and that your path is your own path, and to really put your focus on what you're doing in your life rather than getting dragged into like that comparison. So I'll be behind in life is quite a strong one, I think, that could block us around like financially as well. I guess it's like, oh, I won't earn as much, and or you know, how am I going to make it work? And I think when we get really against with thinking down that, we're going to find all the reasons why it's not going to work, rather than perhaps it won't be as much mental energy in this new role. You'll be enjoying your life more. There might be other opportunities to make money on the side. So I definitely think that I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy.
For sure.
It can get in the way for all of us at times. And that's just like, who am I to step into like apply, or like, this is okay. This role's okay. So it's better what I know than what I don't know. You know, like there'll be someone else better at that, hypothetically, someone else better at that job than me. Therefore, we don't even take the step to even like apply.
I was talking to Christy, who's on another episode, and she was saying you know, it's easy to have this belief like, I'm special because I'm especially bad. But, you know, that's like, you could be especially good, essentially. Like, why are you going to be so much worse than everyone else out there? But that's something that we really pin on ourselves, because it's easy to look at people and think, well, they're going to be so much smarter or more qualified.
Yes, 100%. And I also think another one kind of on the other people is like, if I do this, they're all going to judge me.
Yeah.
Like if I make this drastic change, or if I do this, they're going to judge me. So that one is something I've definitely thought about a lot, because you're going to get judged no matter what you do. Like whether it be like people are going to be people, and I think it's one that can really stop us in our tracks if we let it as well. If we don't realize that we consciously have this thing of like, oh, I'm just, because that was me for a long time. Like I still find myself tipping into like, when I put out content, it's like, how are they going to feel about it? Like, hold on, it's your page. I guess this also comes into like where you're at, what are your responsibilities in life? Like if people have families and mortgages, I know there's a lot more factors involved, but I do think just, again, it's like just knowing that what we believe really strongly, we're going to find evidence to support it, and there'll be nothing else, no window to see any other opportunities. So people say like, what if this goes wrong? What if I fail this? What if it actually goes right? Yeah. It's like a simple shift. And the belief around like, if I do step out and it all turns to shit, I've failed. Yeah. That's one more that I'd say can really stop us from making any change. Yeah.
How would you reframe that one, for example?
I'm learning to believe that I can make steps forward and show up as imperfect and learn in the process.
Okay, I really like that. So it doesn't have to be, I'm going to fail, to switching it to, I'm going to be absolutely amazing. It can be a learning process and a journey that you're reframing your belief to be.
Completely. I think it's actually really
important. Which is so much more manageable.
Yeah, and it's like that, you know, we hear of affirmations, and like, I think I may have even said this when we worked together, going from, let's say, someone who doesn't like the way they look, I hate my body, to I love every part of my beautiful body, it's not going to feel authentic. It's not going to feel congruent. So I think we can always, there's an opportunity for us to always meet ourselves with where we're at in that moment. So it might be like, I dislike my body, to I am learning to find parts of my body that I'm really thankful for because they're functional. Like that feels more.
Yeah, it feels like something that you can actually really believe in.
Yeah. And it's not to deny like that there's, again, like not negative, like feelings and blocks that get in the way. It's like two things can be true at once.
Yeah. Again, small steps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You can be scared about stepping into like something different, and you can potentially be like curious and open as to where this might go.
Yeah.
Holding them both is really powerful thing to do.
So that's a really good place to start for people. If we are looking at some action steps, some key action steps for people who are wanting to move forward, but they don't know where to start, what are the top pieces of advice that you would give to people?
Yeah, I think thinking about your blocks first. So where are these continual themes? If it's your work, that's a pretty easy one. But if it's just in life, I'm feeling stuck, I don't know what to do. It's like just again, getting curious, first step of like, where am I constantly feel like I'm making no progress, or my thoughts are always directed at this? Could be your relationship, your work. In an ideal situation, allowing yourself to have this thought, what would my life look like? Like what values would I be led by? If there were no restraints and I could do what I wanted, or I could sort of step into anything, what would I be doing? And even if it's completely like nothing, it could be very imaginary, but it gives you an idea of like what values might be missing from your life. It could be more freedom. It could be actually I'm a creative, but I'm in a law firm and I need to have more of that. So starting to get curious of like what's missing.
A bit of a reflection process.
Yeah, and so often we think about ourselves negatively in the future, but what if you could just allow yourself some space to be like, in an ideal situation, even if it's just a year, what would that version of me, like what would they be doing? Because it gives you a little bit of space to think. There might be a bit of fear there, like, but no, this is it. But it's like, it also gives you a space to think like, hey, that actually like feels, imagine doing that. That would be so cool.
Yeah.
And like I said, if you can even extract like what it is about that thing that feels good, it might be more connection. Let's say like, I'd be around heaps of people. It's like, in your job currently is one where you're not seeing anyone. It's like, okay, well, connection's actually the missing thing that I need. Doesn't mean leaving the job. Maybe not. Maybe it means more networking events. Yeah. Maybe it means applying for new jobs. But it's like, what is missing? And then I guess from there, one step. Writing down 1 or 2 bullet points of what you could do per week just to either start picking something that's going to take you one step further towards that feeling or that role or whatever that you want. Could be applying for jobs. It could be like, I'm going to go to more networking events. It could be I am going to listen to this podcast with these people talking about changing careers and you know, like just simple steps, I would say, is the first thing.
That's super helpful. It's really nice to come away, like hear all of this, but come away with some really actionable steps. There's actually so much more that I want to dive into with you. You know, we've covered a lot, but there's so much more around like different fears and things, but we should actually wrap this up. So is there anything else before we finish up that you really want to give?
I would just say, like, at the end of the day, your relationship with uncomfortableness is really powerful. If you can have a good relationship with knowing that life happens in seasons. We're never fully stuck. We're always one choice away from a different outcome. Keep your eye on where you are influential in your life. Know that you really are. And I'd say like the courage to take steps towards things that really light you up. Not everyone's purpose is their job, but still including things in your life that make you feel really good. The other thing is find people who have walked a path before you in the direction that you're heading. And people are always going to talk and offer you advice, but just think like, have they been where I actually want to go? I think it's really important, because if you know, like, I want to make a change in job, start listening and surrounding yourself, if you can meet them in person or listen to podcasts of people that have done that, listen to like how they've done it, take advice from that so that you know it's like someone that is heading in the same direction.
Filtering your support people.
Yeah, because other people will have their judgments and that's purely based on their own fears.
Yeah, completely agree.
And judgment often comes because there's a part that, you know, if we're judging, often there's like something within us that it feels a bit intimidated by that person making that move, or we secretly desire that. So just keep that in mind. Like at the end of the day, reach out, ask for support, because what I've learned as a recovering independent person is like it's really hard to make change all by yourself. So there's no shame in that.
And that's what we're here on this pod to support you with, giving inspiring stories from people like yourself. And it was so great to dive into like a lot of those mindset shifts. And if anyone is new to limiting beliefs and how we can turn those into unlimited beliefs to really push ourselves forward. So thank you so much for sharing your personal story as well, and for sharing all your wisdom with us. I know there's going to be so many takeaways. And a key thing, where can people find you and connect with you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at neuro.spark, neuro.spark. My website is www.neurospark.co.nz. I'm on TikTok occasionally. Maybe on that more.
We'll drop everything in the show notes
and my
as well.
Yeah, thank you. And my podcast is called Unlearn with Bianca, and that's on Apple and Spotify.
Amazing.
Cool.
Well, now we all know where to find you. So thanks so much, Bianca.
Thank you, Freya.
Great chat.
It's been awesome. Thank you.